Really excited with today's guest because his story is actually kind of similar to my story, being a healthcare practitioner, going through the motions, seeing patients every day, then something happens regarding the health, and then kind of a wake-up call. So I have with me today Dr. Simon Beylin. Appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for having me. Appreciate it.
So let's get right into it. You went to dental school, you went to your endodontist residency, did root canals, right?
Of course.
So let's start from right there, from when you're getting out in practice. Sort of, what was your mindset with regarding what you at that point when you got out of your training? What were you wanting to accomplish? Were you wanting to maybe try to retire early? Were you like, hey, I'm gonna work until I can't work anymore? Or let's start right there and then dive in.
Yeah, I think we all kind of think we're invisible, right? We get out of school, we're still pretty young. Luckily, when I was in dental school, we were all forced to get insurance, own occupation insurance, even while we were in dental school, just because I think a lot of the staff members there were on disability policies. But my plan was to get out and practice endo. I enjoyed doing root canals. I enjoyed seeing patients, and that kind of was the plan. I always was entrepreneurial in several different aspects, had different businesses going at the same time. But the thought was, yeah, get out of school and do clinical endo.
Did you go straight from college to dental school to your endo residency?
No, I actually I went first out of high school. I couldn't quite figure out what I wanted to do, so I actually owned a paint and body shop for a while, built custom cars, and then got into we had a family friend who was an oral surgeon. I shadowed him a few times, and I thought, hey, this is very similar to what I'm doing with cars, and why not give it a shot? So did undergrad, went straight to dental school. My wife is also a dentist; she's a pediatric dentist, so. While she was in residency, I worked for a few years as a general dentist, and then I went back to school for endo.
All right. So how is being an oral surgeon and painting cars? How is it? You said that was similar.
Yeah, honestly, we used torque wrenches, and the first time I shadowed him, he was using a torque wrench set
Okay.
implant. So I'm like, this is just everything we do, but on a smaller scale. You have to be good with your hands. You have to have business acumen. Otherwise, you could be the best dentist in the world, but if you can't get your patients to say yes, it's not going to matter. So I know we all say we're doctors, but a lot of what we do is with our hands. So it was in that sense a little bit similar.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you graduated, and then from your residency, then did you open your own practice, or did you go in with somebody? What happened at
Yes.
that point?
So my wife, as I mentioned, is a pediatric dentist. So we started opening her offices, and I was practicing endo in our offices, but I was also traveling to other offices doing endo as well. So it kept my schedule quite busy, just seeing patients in our own offices and just a few of my friends' offices. So I never owned my own endo, my own specific endo practice.
Okay. And how long did you do that for?
I graduated in 2016, and then I actually had an injury with which was 2021 when we got our and that kind of ended clinical endo for me.
All right, so that's kind of where I want to start. So walk me through, what sort of issues you were having, and then we'll sort of kind of lead up to what that's forced you to transition to now.
Yeah, so we were somewhat forced. I was practicing in Rhode Island, and Rhode Island made it very clear if you're not getting vaccinated, you're not seeing patients. So there was a very vocal oral surgeon who I think had 6 or 7 offices, and they literally put chains on the front doors of his offices. So a couple of the offices that I was practicing at started asking for my vaccination, and I wasn't vaccinated yet. So I rushed out and got the vaccine. So I should have known immediately when I sat down. The technician put out a syringe, which was 2.5, 3 inch long syringe. I said, well, that's not a vaccine syringe. And so she asked me, what are you, a doctor? So actually, I'm an endodontist. That's not a vaccine syringe. And so she's like, well, we're in the middle of a pandemic. That's what I have. So you would think if it's a person who administers vaccines that you would know if you're supposed to be using a very short vaccine syringe and you have a 3 inch long needle that you're not going to put it down to the hub. And I guess she didn't think that through and injected directly into my joint space. So there was a crunch and a pop. It was quite painful. Within a couple of hours, I had a rash over my entire body, and they couldn't figure out what it was. But the vaccine calcified in the joint space. So I had a couple of surgical procedures, and I ended up with psoriatic arthritis. And it's now been documented that just the vaccine itself can cause psoriatic arthritis, or if you had any underlying chance of becoming one with psoriatic arthritis, it could actually just progress you to full-blown psoriatic arthritis. So it just affected all the joints in my body, affects your eyes. It's It's not fun. So I practiced about as long as I could. And at the final portion of my practice, just unfortunately, I cut a patient's lip. I sutured it real quick, but luckily the patient was very understanding. But I thought this is just enough's enough. I've practiced as long as I can. It's time to move on to something else.
So what sort of symptoms were, I mean, are you just having like, or were you having pain in all the joints and that sort of thing, or just where you physically couldn't treat patients?
Yeah, so you really get a lot of stiffness with psoriatic arthritis in joints, and actually, it's an autoimmune type of arthritis. So it actually eats away at your joints and makes them very painful and hot. So, and the more you use them, the more you feel the symptoms.
And then what were you talking about, the eyes?
Affects your eyes as well. So you get, I had LASIK in, I forget the year, 2005, 2006, somewhere around there. And I had perfect vision before that happened. You just get really dry eyes and it affects your vision a little bit.
So you pretty much you worked until I guess you physically couldn't work anymore, and then how did you transition into? Man, I know your story now. What, the types of developments in real estate and that sort of thing that you're doing, but were you doing anything like that prior to this accident happening, or did that what got you to moving into that?
Yeah, so I had a commercial construction company before that. We built a lot of dental and medical offices. I just started out of necessity. We were building our own offices and expanding our own pediatric offices.
Hmm.
And we were building offices for other doctors as well. But anything ground up and multifamily, I always knew I wanted to venture out as an investor into those spaces, but never thought I would be building ground up. And just buying anything, I had a mentor and kind of advised for your first projects to do them in your own backyard. So I was looking for existing multifamily to do value add, and the cap rates things were trading around. This is around time, they were trading at 2s and 3 caps. It was impossible to get into anything. So I thought, you know what, I could still build this at a 10 cap. Let's see if we can't do that. So I worked with a mentor and got through the first few projects, and we've taken it from that to now over 1,000 units that we currently have under different stages of development, and we're looking to get to the point where we could actually build 1,000 units a year. So that's my next current goal.
Gotcha. So let's kind of dive in a little bit more with that. So the development part, I know you hear some people that say, oh, new development is so risky, and always want to just buy something that's maybe like a B or C class property, value add, that sort of thing. So what are your thoughts about that?
I completely agree. If you don't know what you're doing, you could lose your shirt in development. But luckily, if you're working with, I'm from the New England area. We're building strictly right now in New England. We have some projects that we're looking at in Texas. So the New England banks are extremely conservative. So they won't let you get into a project that's below a 10 cap. So you have to have that huge delta if you're building in this area. You can go to other areas where, Florida right now, the Carolinas, the lending is extremely loose and they'll let you lose your shirt. I almost feel like they don't care. Here, you're not going to get the loan if it doesn't make sense. So I make sure it makes sense. Every single one of my deals, at least half the money so far has been my wife and I. So we don't have investors putting up that money. So if it's going to cause me any angst and I'm not going to sleep at night thinking about whether it's going to work or not, I'm not going to take it on. But I look at other people just getting into development that they don't have a clue. And you think, you know what, I'm just going to pick up this project when they fail. And we've picked up 3 or 4 of our current projects. We picked up exactly that way, where somebody thought they're going to take it through to the finish line and they're going to build it. They just had no clue what they were doing. We bought them at a discount.
So what are some of the current projects you're working on?
So we just finished a 33 unit in Maine. We've got a 34 unit we just put shovels in the ground on, also in Maine. It's in Saco. A 19 unit in Yarmouth, Maine. A few single family houses in Yarmouth, Maine. 48 unit in Windham, New Hampshire. A 45 unit in Windham, New Hampshire, and 180 in Nashua, New Hampshire. So all kind of markets that we're looking for are high growth markets. We also have a project that we're just about to sign on the dotted line, nearly 500 units in outside of Austin, Texas. So the numbers make sense, even though Austin right now is kind of flatline with the rents, but we're underwriting it with the rents being 20% less of what they currently are, and it still makes sense. So if all goes through, it'll be about almost 500 units in Austin.
So what are your goals for these properties? Are you wanting to, develop them and then try to flip them, or you want to hold them for a certain period of time, or what?
Everything that I'm currently involved in is built to hold long term. I do an infinite return model. So we build it, we put in some of our own cash at the beginning. We stabilize it, and then we do a takeout loan, refinance, get our cash back, and do it again. That doesn't mean I'm against selling. If somebody comes knocking with a 3.5 cap offer, I'm a seller. But if it's not that, I have absolutely no reason to sell. I'll keep it for cash flow long term. In this area, 25-year-old building still does very well in terms of maintenance. It would be minimal. So why sell it if it's a well-producing asset?
And you said you currently in your past projects that you've done and the ones now, it's just your wife, you and your wife, you don't bring on outside investors?
My wife and I, we have one partner on some of our projects in Maine, and one in Saco. We have two other dentists involved. So I run a mastermind, and one of the dentists had been following me for about a year prior to the mastermind, but just kind of showing me deals that we'd have already seen in the area. So I always say if it's listed and it's in New England, I've probably already seen it. So you got to find me stuff that's off market. So he came to the mastermind within a week, found a project that was off market in an opportunity zone. So it's four of us that are involved in that one. And Opportunity Zone has excellent tax benefits on the way out. If you keep it for more than 10 years, no capital gains.
Let's talk a little bit about your mastermind and what are some of the, this mainly physicians and dentists or just dentists?
Almost all physicians and dentists. We've had probably each group about 40, 45 people. There'll be one or two that are not dentists, a
Okay.
spouse, but mostly dentists and physicians.
So from the people that have gotten in, I'm focusing more on dentists and physicians. For those people, what are some of the issues that you're seeing with them that's making them want to become interested in transitioning from clinical practice to real estate?
And I think we all realize we're an hourglass, and eventually your clinical side's going to run out of sand. So you better have something that's going to take you through retirement. If you think it's just going to be your practice sale, I think we have another thing coming. I know there's all the noise about DSOs, but eventually that the music's going to end. Practices will sell for what they used to sell for. So you better have something else that's going to take you through retirement. And I kind of what we focus on during the masterminds, this smaller project. So I try to show, look, you can have this 33 unit project. And if you look at what this can produce for you, and if you just want to do a refi every 5 to 10 years, that'll put your kids through college, that'll pay for your retirement, or you never refinance it. And once it's paid off, this one little 33 units kicking off $1.5 million a year in cash flow, 30% given to all your overhead and your management, and you're living better than you would off your dental practice, and you don't have to see patients. So kind of just showing them that there's a world outside of clinical dentistry.
So for the people that maybe are new to this and maybe don't really know much about real estate, can you walk us through an example, maybe one that you've helped somebody with, or maybe one that you're doing now, of what it means to go through the process of purchasing a property, eventually doing like a cash out refinance, and sort of how that infinite return model works?
Sure. I mean, for us, that's been the best model. There's been a lot of noise lately about syndications, and we see a lot of the syndicators got themselves in trouble. When money was loose and you can get 3% lending, all those syndications were great. Today, you got to look at who you're partnering with and what the model is. So on a project like the 34 unit that we're doing in Saco, we just broke ground on. So there are 4 people involved. So there's a developer side and investor side. So the developers, I'm on both because I own the development company, I own the construction company. So the developer side typically won't have any cash in the deal if you're dealing with most merchant developers. I'm very against that. I think if I'm going to ask somebody to invest side by side with me, I want them to know that I have at least 50% of the funds in this deal, because I think that's going to provide a level of comfort where investors or developers that don't invest in their own deals kind of makes me think that you don't believe enough in your own deal to put your own money in it. So on the investor side, I always put at least 50% of the funds, and the other 2 dentists on that deal also put up their portion of the funds. So we buy the land and go through the entitlement process, which is getting all your permits and getting all your approvals to be able to build the project. And we get the loan to build the project as well. So typically in our area right now, you're getting a loan for about 90% loan to cost. So the delta between loan to cost and loan to value is where you're getting into these at a 10 cap. So they want to see a large delta between what actually costs you to build it and what that value is once it's stabilized. So we'll go through the process of building it with the loan money. So 10% of the vertical needs to come from the investors, and 25 to 35% of the land needs to come from the investors as well. So once it's stabilized, we know from our pro formas what that should look like. Then we go back to the bank and we ask for a loan on about 85 to 90% of loan to value. So that delta is going to be quite drastic at that point. So for this project in particular, it's going to be about 1.2 to 1.8 million that comes back out. So all the investors will get double their money back out at that point, but then they remain in the deal for the same amount they actually invested in. So if the person invested 33% into the deal, they'll always remain 33% and get cash flows going forward And we always say we're all on the same page. If rates fall enough and it makes sense to do another cash out refinance in 5 years, we'll do another cash out, have another equity event, and whatever percentage you initially came into the deal with, you'll get that percentage of those proceeds from any cash out refi. And the cash out refis are always tax free, right? So it's not income, and they remain in the deal until eventually one day we sell it. And the reason we're not doing this as syndication, we keep the group small. So at 4 people, we all know going in, we sit down, we break bread, and we know, look, we're all at the same point. We don't need to sell this thing in 5 years. Nobody's gonna be calling in an emergency because they need their $50,000 back. So we go through all of that, and it's set in stone before you go for a 15-year ride with whoever you go on this ride with.
How, in your opinion, how important is it for a dentist or physician that's practicing to look at, let's just say, as they're going through their practice, acquiring different non-clinical sources of income? What would you say to that?
My injury happened when I was in my early 40s. So most people would have practiced endo. You could really practice into your late 60s. You wouldn't think in your early 40s you're going to be injured and not be able to practice anymore. So the more you could have coming from passive sources, the less you're dependent on your active sources, which for us was clinical dentistry. And I think you actually become a better clinician as well if you don't actually have to think about the numbers or what's coming from your clinical practice. You're only doing what's best for the patient. You can say no to a lot more cases that you probably wouldn't have said no to if that was the only way you could pay your bills. So you let your patients push into situations where you probably shouldn't have been when you actually need the income from your clinical dentistry.
Another thing that I'd like to add to that as well is you can also give away free dentistry or free work. People that really want it and, they're working hard and like, man, I just can't pay for it. And then if you're not stressed out and only have one source of income, you could do that.
Absolutely. My wife and I have been able to, we've donated dental clinics for animals. We've been able to do all these different things that real estate allowed us to do, which would have been more difficult just from our clinical dentistry. But yeah, you get to do what you want to do on your time, and nobody's going to tell you anything other than that.
So let's say there's a dentist out there, they've been practicing for, let's say, 8 to 10 years or so, and they're hearing this for the first time and they're saying, okay, well, I only have one source of income. It's my dental income. And all I have is a 401k, which I can't touch until I'm 60, which is 20 plus years away. What are maybe some of the few steps you would recommend that person take to start down the process of acquiring different non-clinical streams of income to get to the point where they're just not, because, I'm sure you've seen it and I've seen it too from the people that we coach. They get so overwhelmed with there's so much information out there on the internet that it's like, what do I do? So to not overwhelm somebody, what are maybe some of the steps you'd recommend that they take to start the process going?
Yeah, follow somebody that's doing what you want to do. That's just 10 steps ahead, and reach out. If somebody, I've seen you at events. People come up to you all the time, and you're a wealth of knowledge, and you give them everything that they want to hear. Find somebody that's going to mentor you. I think specifically, or I would hope, nobody in our community is going to take advantage of other dentists. We've heard horror stories of people outside of dentistry that take advantage of dentists. I think we know that what it means to be a dentist, how we break our backs and we do to our bodies to get to where we are. So I think we're a lot less likely to do that to another dentist. And we're a lot more open and willing to share what it took to get to where we are. I have dentists reaching out all the time, and anybody that I can mentor. I always say, if you want to learn how to do one of these deals, find a deal and bring it to me. Not only will I walk you through the first deal, like hand by hand, I'll walk you step by step through the deal. I'll actually put up 50% of the funds and build it with you. That's Anthony Prezioso, who's found the deal in Saco. That was a deal that I made with him. Find it and I'll build it with you. And if on the second one you want to do it together, by all means, do it. You'll have the knowledge to do it by yourself. But what I find is now we have several deals that we're looking at together because we understand, you can get pretty far by yourself, but you could really move mountains as a team. So find that person that's doing what you want to do and just ask them to take you along. I think most of us will.
Do you have any, and I agree, that's great advice for the people that maybe all they know is dentistry and all they do is go to dental meetings and they don't really know anybody out there like that. Are there any types of books or resources or just something just to get them in the mindset of thinking, going down that track?
I start with Debt Free Doctor, right? So learn everything they can on your website. Then Roshan and Nathan's group is amazing. So go to those events and talk to the speakers. I've spoken at the event a couple of years. I think you're speaking again this coming year. But we have the booths that are set up there, and just find which aspect and what type of investments you want to get into. If it's development, come chat with me. I'm an open book. Mobile parks, they should be knocking on your door. If it's going to be short-term rentals, there are people who speak on short-term rentals. Just find the one that you want to do yourself. And I think the best way to learn that is going to one of these events where it's not just focused strictly on development, even though I would love that because everyone would come and listen to me, but not development's not for everybody. But come to an event where you could see the different aspects. If it's multifamily, if it's value add development, mobile home parks, short-term rentals, all the different aspects are there, and then see who you want to follow. And don't think just because you're in one, that's the only one you need to stick with. You can, I personally don't own any short-term rentals, but I built one last year for my partner, and it's doing amazing. So now I've kind of told him, look, if we could find more short-term rentals in this, as long as I don't have to manage it, as long as I don't have to answer phone calls, I'll build them and I'll invest in them, even though that's not my cup of tea, but he'll manage them. So I'm very open to, if it works, and I've seen it work for somebody else, I could probably make it work on my own. But I'm definitely going to learn the ins and outs before I go and dive deep on my own.
So when we hear real estate, and most of the time, the reason why people like dentists or physicians, they want to get into real estate is for the extra streams of income. I know I've got a private Facebook group now. We're doing some coaching. That's usually the main reason. But talk to us a little bit about the other perk, which I think is just as big or bigger, getting into real estate, and that's the tax benefits. Now, but I mainly want to focus on somebody that's practicing, full-time dentist, full-time doctor, or maybe part-time, and they're maybe doing these partnerships with you, or maybe they're a limited partner in a syndication like that, because there's a lot of misconception, a lot of misinformation out there of what investing in real estate could potentially do to their clinical income. But you and I know that a lot of that is, misinformation. So let's just use an example. Okay. We have a dentist, they join your mastermind and they are learning, and then they go into a partnership with you on a new development. They put their money in. So what are some of the tax advantages they could get both from that project, and then also, does it have any effect with their dental income?
So that varies depending on the situation you're in, and I think every project's a little bit different. So I'll go over the one that Anthony found, being in an opportunity zone, which just with the current administration, I think it's going to get extended again. But you can't find a better deal than opportunity zones. So opportunity zones are meant for the government wanted certain influx of capital to go to areas that they thought without the tax advantages, most people may not invest there. So that project in particular with an opportunity zone, if you have any funds coming into that particular investment that had any capital gains associated with it, you didn't have to pay capital gains for 10 years when the opportunity zone started. Now that's it went down from 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Now it's at 2 years. So in 2 years, you'll have to pay the capital gains. So it's a little too short for comfort, in my opinion, for development, because by the time we get shovels in the ground, build it, we're about 18 months. So now you might actually have to pay capital gains on money that went in before you actually get some of the tax advantages from owning the real estate. But I think they're going to extend it for another 10 years. But that's on the way in. On the way out, where can you have a business where it's making you money for 10 plus years? As long as you keep it for one day over 10 years, that property, whenever it's sold in the future, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, will never have capital gains. I mean, we're all going to have capital gains on our practices when we sell them. Mm-hmm. And in real estate, that's one of the largest taxes that we pay on the way out when you get rid of the property. And that's not one that matters whether you're a real estate professional or not. This is one that you can use because if you sold a property, you had a huge gain, which we expect to have, unless you're in an opportunity zone, there's really no way to shelter those capital gains unless you 1031 into another property, which is really just kicking the can down eventually until the ultimate goal is to die and get a stepped up basis for your kids. I hate to say it, but that's what it is. The other aspects are if you're a real estate professional. So a lot of us can gain real estate professional status if you're spending a certain amount of hours in real estate. And that just depends on how many days you have clinical versus non-clinical and what you're doing on those non-clinical days. And if you are a real estate professional, any of the depreciation that you have against your actual assets that you're building in your real estate portfolio can go to offset your active income. So I'll give you an example. On the 30th of last year, I bought a bank building. So the lower floors is Santander Bank, upper 2 floors will be converted to real estate. But the amount of funds that we put in as our down payment, we're doing a cost seg study. So that's all going to go against my active income from still owning my dental practices right now. And we bought 2 parking lots that were associated with that bank where we're going to put another 60 units. So the tax advantages of real estate can't be beat. That's my personal opinion, and that's why I'm in it.
What about for maybe somebody that's a dentist and they're getting like in a syndication or something like that? Again, there's a lot of misinformation of what that could do. So can you walk us through that a little bit?
I'm going to speak my viewpoint. I hope it matches yours, but I think we're giving a lot of smoke and mirrors when somebody's running a syndication and they tell you they could use any of the depreciation within that syndication against your active income. That's a fallacy. So if you're a dentist practicing 5 days a week, there's no way you can use that to offset your active income. So that becomes such a selling point of the syndicators. People don't read the fine print. So you have to run that through your tax professional and whoever is going to file your taxes for you. But I don't see any way, if you're a full-time clinical dentist, that you're going to be able to use anything that's offset from a syndication against your active income.
Now, I know that you're not a tax professional. Always, tell people to always check with theirs. My question to you would be there, as we're noticing more dentists right now that are selling their practices, whether they're selling to DSO, like private equity, or they're just selling it outright. A lot of times they don't realize they're going to have a tax bill.
Oh, it's going to be huge.
So do you have any recommendations for that person that hasn't even, hey, they want to sell this year or next year, and they haven't even thought about the tax implications? I know we're going to tell them to talk to their tax professional, but as you know, you talk to your tax professional, they're probably just going to say, well, you're going to owe tax. Do you have any recommendations that person could potentially do to save them a little bit of tax money?
So I am working on something with one of my good friends he sold a practice last year, Josh Cochran. I'm not sure if, I think you may know him.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it would be a deferred sales trust. So I don't know if you're familiar with them, but with a deferred sales trust, you can have all of your proceeds as long as you don't touch them. It's almost like a 1031 on steroids. So as long as you never touch the funds and it goes into a deferred sales trust, you can decide where that money gets invested, and you could live off your investments. And as you pull funds out, it gets taxed, and that allows you to tax at a different rates. Because if your active income after you sell your practice is going to be much lower, and you're only taking out $60,000 at a time, you're only getting taxed on that $60,000. So it's at a much different rate than if you hit all that capital gains all at once. So you could have a lot of it invested, and most of it does need to be invested. There are a lot of rules. You have to have a proper trustee that's running the entire deferred sales trust. You can't actually ever touch the money, but you can actually dictate where all the money goes. So you can say, I want so much to go into this development, so much to go into that one. And I think it's a great way to get away from paying all the capital gains at once. So there are plenty of people that set those up. You need a team of attorneys and accountants, but you can definitely help with the tax.
Is that also called an installment sale?
It is, yeah.
Okay. I think that's what I've heard it as, an
Yeah.
installment sale. Okay. Yeah. So I do encourage anybody that's listening, that's whether they're looking at selling their practice now or in the future, that's one thing I want you to keep in the back of your mind, to start the process of planning. And if your accountant or tax advisor can't help you, well, there's people out there that can. And just, as Simon was saying, just go talk to people that have already done it, like Josh or other people out there. And the proof's in the pudding, right?
Right. So, I mean, who's going to be better with your money? You can give 50% of those funds to the government and see how well they invest it over the next 25 years, or you can invest it for the 25 years and then pay your taxes on it. But I'm sure you can grow your pot of gold much better than the government's going to grow it for you.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
why not keep it and then pay taxes once you no longer want to invest?
Right. Well, I appreciate your time today, and I know you're have a wealth of information. You mentioned a mastermind, you mentioned developments, that sort of thing. You mentioned some tax advice. Somebody wants to connect with you, learn more about what you're doing. Where can they go?
BeylinDevelopment.com. That's our website. We have information on the masterminds there. Always try to have the masterminds because we are in New England, not during the months that are too cold. So you can come out here and enjoy. We hold them currently in Maine. I live in New Hampshire, but about 50% of what we're doing right now is in Maine. So you come check out Portland and learn a little bit about real estate development. Interestingly, last time we had 48 participants and over 30 came from Texas. So we're very we try to pay attention to the weather, not have them here
Yeah.
in February like it is right now, and it's 6 degrees outside.
So this is Beylin Development or Developments with an S?
No S, Beylin
No S.
Development.
Okay, and I'll put the link below this video, the YouTube video, so people can just click on it. Well, sir, I appreciate your. I've seen you. I've met you before. I've seen you speak at the events. You're very very knowledgeable, great guy, honest guy, giving guy. So that's why I wanted to get you here on the show.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.